Before let's just start. And I think, Rich, thank you, because this is the first time that we're having you in our podcast series, and it would be great for all of us to get to know you. So, would you be able to just give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. So I'm 76 years old. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. I grew up in Australia, migrated to the US as a teenager. That was the first of 9 migrations back and forth between Australia and the US. I graduated from Stanford in the late 60s and had a bit of a diversified career right out of school, but ended up in the very beginning of what became the financial planning industry in San Francisco, was a foundation member of what is now called the IAFP, the International Association of Financial Planners. Me and 8 other guys formed that. But while working in that industry, I met Charles Schwab when Schwab was literally 3 guys in a basement across the street. And Chuck and I just hit it off and stayed in touch and saw each other regularly over the next couple of years. And in 1977, when his firm was about 23 people, I joined as his right-hand man, numbers guy, strategy guy, deal guy, CFO, and left when it was 6,000 people. So in 13 years, I just learned high growth in an applied technology space from just amazingly wonderful people, everything from our vendors to the New York Stock Exchange people to the SEC to the auditors you just learn a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I I did multiple acquisitions. I sold the whole company to Bank of America. I bought it back in a leveraged buyout. I listed it on the New York Stock Exchange in an IPO. So I just learned a lot. And in 1990, I uh, by the way, since you work for a bank, when we sold it to Bank of America, B of A asked me to go down to Australia and start Bank of America Australia. And prior to doing that, the CEO gave me a letter that said, "Tell Rich what he wants to know." And I got to go in every single department of an entire, the then second largest financial institution in the world and say, "What do you do? Why do you do it that way? Have you thought about doing it this way?" I just
Yeah.
learned a lot.
Wow.
Anyway,
Fantastic.
in 1990, um, I really wanted my kids to have more of what I'd had growing up, and I wanted them to be multinational. And I cashed in the chips and moved back down to Australia and bought 40 acres in the country and put horses in the back paddock and the kids in country school and
Wow.
thought I would be semi-retired, but I just landed in country knowing a lot of stuff that nobody knew. And so I ended up in front of a lot of whiteboards and boards of directors and on a bunch of boards, including fund management companies and the Investment Industry Association and things like that.
Thank you so much, Rich. And you know what? I want to introduce you to our other guest, Abhay, today to you, because I've known Abhay for a few years now, and he's been a mentor to me. And there's a little bit of backstory before I kind of introduce you to him. Is that when India, Rich, was opening its public sectors to privatization, we saw this massive transformation happen in the banking landscape. And ICICI led that transformation. And for the first time, Indian consumers, as I remember, were able to experience services at scale. And ICICI, if you think about it, in many ways set that background to customer experience as we discuss this in this industry today. And here we have Mr. Abhay Johorey, who is at the forefront of this ongoing transformation, who's also steering the bank's digital strategy into the future. Abhay, I can't thank you in so many words, but thank you so much. And it's a privilege, it's an absolute privilege to have you give us your time today. Thank you for doing
Oh,
this.
my pleasure. My pleasure. And yeah, privileged to just share this platform with Rich as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think because there's so much of experience from Rich and Abhay and Akash sitting here, I want to dive right into and tap it right into this discussion. the first question will be to Abhay. Uh, I want to, Abhay, how do you look at this, right? So, how do you see that the Indian, uh, when we look at the Indian digital public infrastructure, how has that really supported the banks in adopting GenAI capabilities? How do you
Okay.
see that? What's your take?
Okay. So a little bit of background for Rich as well is India's digital public infrastructure, dare I say it, is now
Yeah.
one of the best that actually
Yes.
exists. We were the first country to actually introduce real-time, payments, without any netting, across the board, just on a pure identifier, which is largely linked to mobile numbers. So yeah, I mean, Indians can actually just move money across,
Yeah.
when more backed by the government, if you will.
Yep.
And actually it's a very sophisticated stack because it actually comes in three layers. At the bare minimum, you have the identity layer. So you have the entire, biometric, details of, 687 million customers,
Yeah.
Indians, and on top of that, you have a payments stack with the unified payment interface, the UPI set. And above that, which is the third layer, which is the layer that's getting built, is the entire content and consent architecture. Yeah, I mean, uh, financial services are very, very rich in data, but the point is, if you're creating a digital public infrastructure as opposed to,
Yeah.
a bunch of large banks, coming together, and creating a shared infrastructure. This one is actually sponsored by the government and the ministry, and there's a private-public partnership in this entire set. But the beauty of the public infrastructure is that everyone can just participate in it. Yeah, and it's clearly a platform in the true sense of word. Is the value of the platform goes up when the number of participants actually increase. Yeah. So the first two layers, the identity and the payments layer, are fairly stable, very well penetrated, being extremely generously used. Yeah. The
Yeah.
third layer, which is now the entire content and consent layer, so has concepts like the account aggregator, where various financial providers, based on a consent from the customers, can actually share data electronically with each other. And this is where the government's actually proposing that we form a training infrastructure for AI. Yeah. So I mean, whether you want to use machine learning or deep learning or Gen AI concept, end of the day, these models have to be trained. Yeah. So it's called DEPA for training. Yeah, which is basically Data Empowerment and Protection Act. So that entire infrastructure is getting created for that, and has very, very interesting concepts like digital contracts, where people can actually legally enter into contracts to participants. It has a clean room where sanitized data can actually be kept and the models can be trained. Obviously, none of the data actually includes PIIs, kind of a set. And then there is a complete consent architecture for various customers to know exactly how their data is being used and indeed compensated for some of that. So the very, very forward looking concepts, but this is pretty much work in progress. Yeah, the clean rooms,
Is
the
it is
contract.
it built
Yeah.
on is it built on blockchain or
No, it's built on open source, managed by quasi-public entities. So we don't use blockchain here at all. It's actually just Intel-based hardware, if you please.
That was
On yeah.
no, that was my first thought as well, Rich,
Yeah.
when it was all about the digital contracts, because blockchain is all about digital contracts. And so
Yeah.
the first thought was, is this going to be on blockchain? But
No,
it'll
no,
be
no.
very
It's
interesting to
it's
know
Those
what they're
technologies. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, so confidential clean rooms, differential privacy, digital contracts, all of that is coming into place, backed with legislation. And it's not just banking, so it's all security types, so whether it's mutual funds or insurance or banking, they all fall within the same gamut. But these are early days. I mean, all of the stuff got conceptualized in 23 and is in the various stages of actually getting rolled out. In fact,
Yeah.
account aggregator as a concept where a customer could actually port his entire financial history and be responsible for it is still finding its ground, in the country. So I would say using Gen AI backed by the digital infrastructure, yes, there is an intent. But yeah, it's work in progress, early days.
Rich, I'd like to, what's your take on whatever, Abhay has just shared? How would you like to add to that?
So I'm going to give you three different angles on it. Firstly, I'm really impressed. I mean, it's fabulous to hear that somebody's doing the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. There is in the whole privacy issue, the management of what metadata is associated with the data is really, really critical. So I give the example of the Australian healthcare system. I was talking to the woman who runs all of Sydney or metropolitan and regional healthcare, where she's got 100 hospitals and things like that. And it's important when that person presents in the emergency room that the doctors know that this person has AIDS, but not that that was discovered in a test administered in a prison. Right. So this issue of which metadata becomes open source and visible, and which is properly controlled by the individual who has rights ownership or digital ownership of those rights. That's really hard to get right. And there's a lot of my financial data out there in networks, and linking it all together is fantastic. But, do we really want to know that I play poker, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that megalithic systems with a central control as opposed to a peer-to-peer architecture have risk attributes that are troubling.
Yeah.
And AI in particular is an area where a friend of mine is a guy by the name of Rohit Israni, who just led the International Standards Organization in the development of their AI risk management, the new ISO 45001. And if you really understand what is behind that, you realize that every single large enterprise audit committee needs to now have a whole new function, because AI is being implemented all over the place.
Yep.
And the various risks and problems that get associated with that. You can have something as simple as a bot that is transcribing a board meeting, and the board meeting decides to move the Sydney office from Elizabeth Street to Hertford Street, and the bot taker says we're going to close Elizabeth Street, and suddenly 250 resumes are on the market. Right? So how do we control those kinds of risks? And then how do you do that in a system that doesn't have just one institutional control point, but has many, many institutions participating in it?
To bring all of this together,
Sakshi, Sakshi, I must interject. I must tell you that Rich is World Series poker participant, player for many years now, which is why he brought up the poker bit. So I wanted to give that nugget in there.
All right. Okay. Thank you for this information. But yeah, I mean, it's very well put, Rich. And I think it is. The way that we're looking at it is that it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a long-drawn investment by organizations, by leaderships, and this will be work in progress as we talk about. Moving on to my next question, Abhay, again to you.
Sorry, Sakshi, I have to interject.
Yeah.
The problem is pace of change. You can't say it's a long-term project. You have to have an agile methodology applied to all of this, and recognize the mistakes and fix them very quickly.
Absolutely.
This is going to move so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think because, and this is as we move into a conversation, Rich, and we're trying to explore because we've had so much of experience now working with financial services clients in India, where there's so much of India is now rapidly emerging as the fastest growing digital economy in the world. But yet we see there's so much of resistance to adopting um, new technologies, emerging technologies. So I think that's the focus of our conversation and tapping onto somebody who's driving this at a scale as ICICI, Abhay here, and I think and I would be very interested to learn from your experience for so many years, managing so many different businesses. So here's the thing, Abhay. The next question. The next question that I want to understand, and adding on to what just Rich said, is that in my experience so far with Sherlock, and what we've seen is that in very pull product industries where there is an established consumer need for consumption and for ownership, we've seen how these GenAI capabilities have really transformed the mid-marketing funnel. But when it comes to push product industries, such as financial services, such as banking, it becomes a little more complicated. And as Rich and we've discussed, right, that we're trying to create this balance between a very stringent regulatory environment and we're also catering to very diversified demographics that exist in India, right? And every 25 kilometers, dialect changes.
Yeah.
And then there are diversified financial needs. So in your experience, they talk to us about how do you see that these capabilities, these GenAI capabilities, these AI capabilities can come in to really facilitate banks to elevate this mid-marketing funnel. And the idea ultimately is to create personalized, hyper-personalized customer experiences, but at scale, because India is all about scale.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there are two questions there, and let me answer the second one first. Yeah, which is this entire mid-marketing piece and hyper-personalization. Yeah. Uh, See, end of the day, a good cat is one that catches the mice. Yeah, it does not matter whether it's a black cat or a blue cat or what kind of stuff. Yeah. End of the day, you got to get the job done. Now, what is the job? The job is to just persuade customers that they started off on a journey to improve their, whichever financial goal it was, whether to acquire a card or, get funding or make sure that they can plan their financial life with a savings account or a current account. Yeah. So they started on a journey and, there is a part of it which is persuading them to say that you are best placed to do that on the top of the funnel. The middle of the funnel is, they're through the journey and, you just need a little bit of a nudge to just keep moving forwards. Yeah. Now, this is where I think personalization helps, which is, that people like you do things like this, or, this product is good for you, in a sense. Yeah. Uh, Now, should you use business rules engine? Should you use machine learning? Should you use deep learning, or should you use LLMs? Gen AI is a more catchy word for that. To achieve that end, which is just keep moving the customer a little forward. And the three things which are very important here. The first one is there's a very fine line between persuasion and intrusion. Yeah, you got to be careful there. The second one is that some of them might be your customers who are wanting new products, and some of them might be completely new to the bank. Yeah, you get a little more leeway, with new to the bank, because there are a lot more signals you can actually pick up from an audience point of view. From a customer who wants to acquire a new one, it's a completely different ballgame because we anyway know most things based on the previous set. So it's a first party data in that sense. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, where do you use business rules engines? Where do you use machine learning is a matter of detail. Yeah. And in most cases, what you want your models to be is explainable. Yeah. We are in a fiduciary industry. Even if you're getting results, you want to understand what caused that goodness of the result so that you can, amplify that particular signal. Yeah. It is easier to explain machine learning models, more difficult, to do deep learning models, and almost impossible to explain Gen AI. Yeah? With the same prompt, you actually get different results, yeah, different points in time. So while it is great for creating alternative creative strategies, I think it's very important to have a human in the loop, especially when you're using Gen AI, components. And that sometimes defeats the purpose of hyper personalization at scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
But with machine learning and BREs, you can actually pretty much, get most of the things done. So I would be careful in scaling up Gen AI just yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to just understand this a little better, especially in a fiduciary, industry such as ours, and
Yeah.
especially if it's a existing customer who you're cross-selling to. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
but where we do find very, very good uses for Gen AI is, humans in the loop is, you got a contact center folk, who wants to just improve the way the persuasion on the email is, and you can actually get Gen AI to just improve that and send it across. But you do need a pair of eyes to just validate that. Yeah. With a
Yeah.
BRE or a machine learn, you can pretty much, do it because, those models are explainable. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my limited point as to, the journey that we are on now. Is Gen AI awesome? Sure, it is. Yeah. It's great for generating alternative scenarios. It is great for, adding, more content. But at no point in time would I actually consider implementing at scale without any humans in loop. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a very valid point. Akash, you had a point. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Akshi. So, no, I actually want to just add to Abhay what Abhay just talked about, right? So when you let loose Gen AI or LLMs, you're looking at, like you said, right? Every prompt has a different sort of output to it, and then what do you really rely on? And there's the whole problem of hallucination, right? And it's creating its own data, it's creating its own scenarios. So I want to do a plug-in here with our platform, which is Sherlock, which is why we are all here as well. Very quickly we realized that LLMs have this problem, and so essentially under the hood with Sherlock, we actually have a very sophisticated knowledge graph. And what that knowledge graph does is when it uses the knowledge of the universe and brings it together in a sort of a more ring-fenced manner and trains the LLMs on the knowledge graphs. So there is a sort of a ring-fenced sort of a area which the LLMs are not, so they're not allowed to just go out there and just hallucinate on
Do this thing.
everything. It's trained on this knowledge graph, which is a very, very specific set of data sets put together so that there is control and there is enough information that will solve the purpose here. So, which is why I wanted to sort of come in, Sakshi, and
No,
try
absolutely.
and
No, that's what I completely understand because what I've seen in my experience as well is that when we were interacting with different uh, AI, business models, right? And they were looking at, they're all looking at deep learning, machine learning to build these predictive models, but they were mostly looking at correlations. If I am a business, like Abhay just said, that I'm not going to put my bet on a correlation inside. I would want to look at what really drives, what's the causality behind it. And I think one of the key aspects to Sherlock, Akash, is also the causal Bayesian network that we talk about. It's figuring out the cause and effect relationship between all these different data sets. Um, so that's that. Rich, talk to us about.
Just a point
Yeah,
there, clarification, Sakshi, is, when I mean explainability, I'm
yeah,
okay with post facto, explainability, because,
absolutely.
end of the day, recognize a pattern. Sometimes the reaction time, is a far more desirable attribute than a fully explained set. But
No,
as long as you
right.
can, even post facto, you're pretty much okay with it. Yeah. Yeah.
no,
So
absolutely. And
just
I
a
think,
point.
I think I,
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
sorry to change the sort of level of perspective that we're looking at this, but
yeah,
when we talk about the need for human in the loop, which I 100% completely endorse
yeah,
and have been very involved in human in the loop machine learning systems. The problem comes to the question of what is the inefficiency tax that we are placing on the national savings base?
Yeah.
Right? So what is the total cost of this system divided by the total number of assets being managed and administered under the system? And
Yeah.
where are the key drivers that change that equation by an order of magnitude? And
Yeah.
and machine learning is a contributor to an order of magnitude change in the system effectiveness and potentially also the system cost. But the more that you have to have human in the loop control elements,
Yeah.
you constrain the ability of the system to become optimally efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree to that. And I think that brings to my next question. And again, I'm throwing this to both Rich and to Abhay, and particular to Abhay, right? Because when you're driving transformation at ICICI scale, right, which is massive, how do you look at bringing that transformational change, bringing all these deeper consumer insights, whether it's related to products, services, consumers, most importantly, and
Yeah.
then emerging and kind of assimilating that with these emerging technologies that we're discussing today. But at the same point of time, as Rich also said, is that the key job here is to also navigate the pull of the already established but very effective practices, right? Because this industry has existed for decades now, and
300
without
years.
300 years, yeah. So here's the thing, right? It has operated without machines and with almost efficacy. And so how do you bring this balance between the new ways of working and then the old established methods that really work?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
what's the secret there?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, first things first. Yeah, foundationally, any tech-enabled change is actually not a tech-enabled change. Yeah, it's a tech-enabled business change. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the thing that most people tend to forget is, foundationally, if it does not add value to the business, it is just a wish or a hope or an aspiration. End of the day, you got to trace it back to one of the three vectors. Yeah. Are your profits long term going up? Are your costs long term going down? Are your risks long term getting mitigated or bounded? Yeah. Those are the three things you need to look at. Yeah. And these are really the final order impacts. And let me just give you an example. Yeah. You implement machine learning on a contact center system. Let's say the average handle time of a query goes down. Yeah. So average handle query time going down is a first order impact. Yeah. Does it result in a higher volume, a more satisfied customer, and a more efficient way to handle queries? That is a second order thing. And between the first order and the second order, there are policies, there are process change management, and there are training issues. Yeah. So all of that has to be factored in. Yeah. So the first thing is to realize that it is not tech change, it is tech enabled business change. Yeah. So that's point one. Yeah. Point two is nobody resists change. People resist being changed. Yeah. So there has to be a lot of buy-in from at least all the large stakeholders, and some of the large scale tech where you need sustained funding over a period of time, and obviously it has to, as Rich said, go on agile cycles, and so that people continuously see progress. You need to have some buy-in for folks who actually make policy. Yeah. So some of it is actually top down. Yeah. Buy-in, but some of it is actually top down, and a lot of focus actually has to happen there. And I would say the third thing is, it helps if some of the benefit streams start flowing early. Yeah, you have to see those green shoots popping up, and not wait for a big bang that suddenly one day there is utopia. Yeah. So as long as these three things are understood, that there are concomitant process, training, and people issues that need to be handled, There has to be a buy-in from the top, and and all the folks who are involved in the change, and start producing some results with a clear line of sight of to how this whole thing is happening. I would add a fourth one is, especially with the pace of change, you actually end up with some dud, experiments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, a failure is a good thing because, you understand, you just figured out one more way in which things don't work. So there has to also be a stop loss saying, we tried, we had a good idea. Maybe, we're not ready for it. Maybe this is an idea whose time had not come yet. Yeah. So a web van, in early 90s, I'm preceded, the rest of the guys, and they were the most spectacular failure, right? And,
Yeah.
you wait for, the Amazons of the world to come and, get the model right. But it wasn't just the business model, you also need accompanying technologies that actually just propel that forward. Yeah. So I would say, there is a good reason why 80 to 90% of large changes fail is, one of this 3 or 4 things I just talked about was not
Yeah.
taken care of. Yeah.
Abhay, I love what you just said. I've got a perspective on this that you'll probably find interesting. It is a portfolio management problem. So,
Absolutely.
so a modern agile enterprise has key strategies that are openly shared and properly understood across the organization. It has identified KPIs. You mentioned some of them earlier of, increased revenue or increased profit or increased customer sat or decreased cost or better managed risk. And then it has a portfolio of initiatives, which in an organization the size of ICICI could be thousands
Yeah.
of, and rather than using the term projects or initiatives, call them experiments, because identifying a minimum viable product that gets an early green shoot and then doing did that validate or refute the hypothesis behind it, and do we pivot or persevere? That whole process of managing rapid
Yeah. Changes. Yeah.
deployment of new ways of doing things
Yeah.
is a portfolio management problem. And there are very, very few organizations that actually have a room where everything's on the wall, or a digital room where everything's on the wall, so that you get the universal buy-in of the organization to the portfolio management approach and to the initiative set that is being funded.
Yeah.
But
Because
that's now happening globally.
yeah.
80 or 90% of all large organizations are deploying methods aimed at what I just described.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree because, Rich, I think when we're talking to business leaders, right, when we talk to them and we discuss, not Abhay I'm talking about here, but there are business leaders that we talk about and we discuss what's their digital strategy and what's their vision. They're talking to us about the 3 to 5 year budgetary rollouts and uh, you know, market share acquisitions. What they're not talking about, and that's what Abhay is saying, and the idea is to create that, to navigate. One is that established practice of what has worked in this industry, but the idea here is to also leverage this new room thinking, because the idea here is to look at how do we bring in these insights in the business and then kind of build the competence within. And that's what Abhay just spoke to us brilliantly in a few points. I think very important, and Rich also pointed out, and this question now is to Akash. Akash, Akash, we've been reading reports uh, that the Chat GPT-3 scored an IQ 145 and above when it was tested on tests like SATs and Mensa, right? And there are rumors that say that ChatGPT-4's IQ is even exponentially higher. Then we can choose to dismiss this as rumors and frivolous, but the reality that we see today is that there are these rapid developments that are happening in the field of reinforcement learning, which we say is automated ML, right? where all these AI agents are learning from, their own actions and from the actions of other AI agents. And you combine this, Akash, with all the other innovations and advancements that are happening in the field of creativity, with all these generative models such as Midjourney Stable Diffusion. The question here is that how are we looking at these developments, and especially when it comes to the future AI capabilities? How are we looking at creativity? Are we
Yeah.
also evaluating maybe a super intelligence or a human-like consciousness? Where is this really going, Akash? And I want Rich and Abhay to also add to this theology. Yeah.
Well, there is a so when this news thing came out about this IQ level thing, I had people messaging me on WhatsApp saying, "Are we at the Terminator era now? And is this the end? What is your take on this and stuff?" But see, the thing with SATs and with legal examinations and all the other kind of exams or medical exams and stuff, a lot of that the AI has been trained on all the information that's available. And in all the years that I've been in tech, I think the single um, maxim that everyone follows is that garbage in and garbage out, right? So for AI to now start um, to be impactful in business functions, the data in the business functions needs to be good. So it needs to be structured, it needs to be vetted, it needs to be scrubbed. All of that information, so far AI has been trained on the universe out there, right? And some parts of the universe are structured. A lot of the universe is actually unstructured, right?
Yeah.
So I think we are still a little further away from the consciousness and the AI consciousness that we're talking about, because these are just initial days. uh, I think there's a lot of hard work that will be required to clean the bottom, and make sure that the information that is available to the AI is good, so that then it can start to give out more intelligent stuff. Otherwise, we're going to just see, people using ChatGPT for um, to solve an answer, or like Abhay mentioned, I need to make this email a lot better. Yes, on the creative side, Midjourney and the other guys are also using. In fact, we as again, there's a plugin for Sherlock. We've also built a model that for one of our large CPG clients, which analyzes all the creative stuff and then provides and sort of I won't be able to tell you much about it, but it analyzes the creative stuff to help them optimize their marketing function, right? So there are these tools that are doing a lot of work in the creative field, but I think to tie it all together into a business function that will have a lot of impact, I think we're still a few. I wouldn't dare to say a few years away, because the pace of change is very
Yeah.
rapid. But I think
Yeah.
we're still maybe 6 to 8 months away. It's not around the corner yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rich, what do you have to say to this?
So I have three things to say again. The first is that, Sakshi, you mentioned earlier about dialects being different 25 miles apart. I've been all over India. I've been up in Madhya Pradesh and the Punjab. I've been in Goa and Chennai and Bangalore and Hyderabad and Mumbai and Delhi and Pune and
Rich,
the
you should
cultures are
mention.
different in every single one of those places.
Yeah.
When I was the chief operating officer of a company then called Crowdflower, now called Figure Eight, which does global microtasking for machine learning training data. So regional language is really, really complicated.
Yeah.
And what you say in French means something different in Paris than it does in Dakar, Senegal.
Yeah.
And getting that level of granularity about what the machine learning systems are understanding to be the problem and the optimal solution is a massively complicated and very long-term problem, because, to Akash's point, the data that you start with is not clean. If you actually look at what data scientists do, they spend 70% of their time cleaning and normalizing data, not analyzing data.
Yeah.
And getting good at data quality and data completeness and data pattern recognition and all that kind of stuff is a very, very big investment that the world is making today. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to never be perfect, which means that getting to sentient AI is actually like a frog trying to get to the end of a log, jumping halfway each time. You never actually get there. You just asymptote towards it, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. A very, very valid point. Abhay, what do you have to say to this?
Yeah. So I agree and I disagree with Rick. Where I disagree is, I think, this nature of exponential stuff. Yeah. I mean, 10, 20, 40 is easy to understand, but a 10, 100,000, 10 to the power, and a lot of stuff that we're seeing right now is exponential. Yeah. And it has to do with novel ways in which this entire LLM has been construed, right? You keep doing biomimicry with the way the brain works. And at some point in time, you'll reach a threshold where you can pretty much, I wouldn't say exceed, but pretty much be at par with an average college grad. Yeah. And that's very profound. My sense is, I mean, give or take a couple of decades and we're there. So we could see it in our lifetime. And what does not worry me is, this technology will call employment adjustments. Yeah, I mean, none of us are Luddites. I mean, when they introduced Excel, your accountants didn't go out of fashion, right? They just stopped analyzing, and creating ledgers to actually analyzing financial statements and, so on and so forth. So everyone just elevates, the job that they do. What I'm worried about is unintended consequences, and misaligned goals. And they're two different things, Let me give you an example. Unintended consequences is, let's say if you give a supercomputer, I'm assuming it exists in another 20 years, idea to maximize human happiness, right? Very, very laudable kind of a goal. And the way it figures out is just rewires everyone's neurological, circuits so that, you're happy irrespective of what you do. Yeah, and that was not the intent, right? The intent was to maximize within a constraint that, people actually just find joy in little things or, whichever line of philosophy you want to give it. But it just, creates a new pill saying this is a happiness pill and just everyone takes it, and interferes with that. So this whole second order impact of unintended consequences is crazy. The other one is on misaligned goals. Yeah, I mean, you give it a problem, let's say, give you a mathematical problem, solve this problem. And the kind of computing that it needs, it starts, spawning off agents, and every energy source, on Earth is actually used to just solve that problem, and that just effectively kills off, the creator itself. Yeah. So, so those are the kind of things that we have to worry about. The famous science fiction, that you can't have a kill button on me. Yeah, because I'm sorry, I can't allow you to do that. Yeah. That's what the supercomputer is going to say. So when we are constructing that piece, a lot of thought, and unfortunately or fortunately, it will not come from hard sciences. Yeah, it'll come from religious studies. It'll come from philosophies. Yeah, so you need a lot of those guys actually laying down policies for what is allowed, what is not allowed, and more importantly, what can it not do. And by not do is not place undue constraints, but give it limitations on goals, that, you have to do it within this kind of a boundary. Now, those boundaries, will impose a tax, on the entire system. And, one will have to just take those kind of calls. So, I mean, I'm worried about that. Will AGI happen? My sense is it will happen in our lifetimes, largely because of the exponential nature. And, it's the new architectures that are being put in place. LLM is a subset of deep learning, but what it did, was attention is all that you really need, and therefore this whole attention algorithm just increased our capabilities, onto the next level. Yeah. And right now we're using it for editing photographs, for converting landscape to portraits, filling in stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, very soon it could do
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah. Akash, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Abhay, to your point, right? I think one of the key things is what role policy and regulation is going to play in this
Just
whole
coming
thing,
to that,
right?
yeah.
It's like essentially if a self-driving car kills somebody on the road, then who is responsible? Is it the car manufacturer or the person who owns the car, right? So,
Or no
so
worse,
that's I
the
think
programmer who did the code did not
that's
test
right.
it.
The company that manufactured, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so who is responsible for that? I think policy and regulation in this case as well. I mean, this is just the base case scenario, but it's pretty easy for everyone to understand. And if things go wrong, how is regulation and policy going to be? And it's going to be very interesting the next few years in terms of how countries actually start to deal with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I jump in there, Akash, because there's a
Yes.
really great example here in like self-driving cars kill less people than human-driven cars. We know that, like order of
Right.
magnitude difference, but they kill people, right? So airbags save lives, but airbags also blew up and killed people.
Yeah.
And we put an entire innovation company, Takata, out of business because we sued them into failure,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though they had saved millions of lives. This is this is going to be a recurring problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
think it's
That's
the same problem that just changes form, right? It used to be the form of airbags. Now the thing is going to just be in the form of self-driving cars. But it's the same problem again, is
But I
how,
also think, Akash, that there is a huge problem in the pace at which regulation is able to be developed. We
yes,
are innovating so much faster than the regulators can keep up with. I
exactly.
mean, I gave a speech in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission in 1981, where I told them they had to learn how to regulate software instead of just humans. And still to this day, we don't know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's 50 years, 45 years.
Yeah.
And and Abhay and his team are doing things to the consumer experience and to the balance sheet and income statement of the bank and to the risk structure of the bank that regulators cannot keep up with, which means that the organizations have to self-regulate.
yeah.
Yeah. Brilliantly said.
It's
Brilliantly
yeah,
said. Yeah.
do the right thing. Yeah, do the right thing.
So it also is very tricky in the world that we live in today. That doing the right thing because there's so much happening globally, politically. So yeah, I mean, it's only time will tell. Yeah. Any
Yeah.
last parting thoughts on this conversation? I think we're up on our time.
I've got one last thing, Abhay. One of the critical things in both large organizations and cross-industry groups is vision. It
Yeah.
is a limited number of people that can kind of natively draw a graph that's 50 years long with today in the middle and kind of see where we're going, right? When Schwab changed, Akash has heard me say this before, when Schwab changed brokerage to discount brokerage, it took the cost of a trade from $150 to $75. And it took us seeing that that was a curve asymptoting to zero to start building a company that could operate with zero commission revenue, right? Where do you bring insightful long-term perspective of where this is headed when the pace of change is, as you say, it's
Exponential.
parabolic.
And
Yeah.
also in an economy, Rich, because India is a very price sensitive market, and I think Indians do so much of discount shopping. Um, and this is like a part of the DNA, from the richest to the richest that you could think about to anybody We like to bargain. We like to have a good deal. So when you're looking at all of these innovations, and then you have people like Abhay who are trying to kind of fit in the psychology, fitting in the mindsets, uh, and again driving value. It's not easy. So Abhay, what do you have to say to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I would say, there are two things there. Yeah. One is you got to be very, very close to your customers. Yeah. And foundationally, you have to just figure out what are they wanting to do? What are the jobs, that they are involved with? And how do you make that more
Easier.
effective, with
Yeah.
easier? And also, with financial services, there's a lot of emotion that comes into picture as well. So ease, effectiveness, emotion, I mean, how do you just keep improving that piece, and end of the day, there will always be, in the ecosystem and in the tech world, there will be changes. So just keep making sure that you don't lose sight of what was it that was wanting to be achieved. Yes, I think that's one thing. Stay very, very close to the customers. A lot of leadership team actually listens to the contact center queries, yeah, to get a sense of where we are at, in the branches, agents who are actually, visiting customers' homes, get a sense of what are people doing, how are they solving their problems. Yeah, so that's one thing. The second one is a lot of innovation actually comes from startups. Yeah. So how do you remain plugged in, into that vibrant ecosystem? Yeah. A lot of stuff's happening in Bangalore and Hyderabad and Gurgaon, and not everything is happening out of Bombay. Yeah. So you got to be involved there. Whether you want to invest in those guys, whether you want to do hackathons to actually invite those guys in to actually just test out new ideas, or just partner with those guys. Let's just get this thing onto the market. And again, portfolio of experiments. Some of them will work out. Some of them will give us insights, which work out better. So I think these two things is, watch your competitors, what's happening in the space, and also watch what's happening to customers. How are they
Yeah.
adopting stuff? Between the two, I think you would find a way. But again, yeah, some of it is actually going to be, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with small steps. But
Yeah.
like Rick said, I mean, you need a map. You need some kind of a vision. And one of the components that we're thinking through is a concept of an embedded bank. Yeah. Everyone needs banking. Nobody really needs a bank to deliver banking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, how does banking get involved in day-to-day lives of the customers? Yeah. And again, goes back to the same point. What are they wanting to do?
Yeah.
Nobody wants a mortgage. People want a home. Nobody wants, an automobile loan. They want to go from one point to another. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how
I
do
would,
you
I
get?
would,
Yeah.
I would add one quick thing to that, Akshay, which is it's not just what they want to do; it's what they are doing.
Well,
So,
that's right. That's watch it. Yeah. Watch what
a
they're doing.
friend,
Yeah.
a friend of mine runs the Stanford credit union, where all the Stanford employees are there, and so they have a card program. And what they found out is that a lot of the Mexican Americans that work in the, janitorial stuff or the hospital stuff or whatever, Pedro wants to go back to Mexico for Christmas. And so Frederick lends him the money and wants to be paid back out of Pedro's paycheck, $15 a week for the next 60 weeks. And they're doing that somehow with cash or with, handwritten notes or whatever. But actually, you can make your India bank system administer that entire thing and integrate with the payroll and everything. So observing their actual behavior, not just their stated desire, is
Yeah.
really, really important.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, Rich, I know that you come from a psychology background, just like myself. And I think, when we look at today, there's so much, you know, I look at AI and all these Gen AI models as behavioral economics, right? Which tells you that why consumers buy. And what AI is doing this is putting that inside on steroids, which is organizations will not succeed, as what Abhay just shared, that we are not succeeding by telling consumers in this IoT world that everybody is today living in and telling them that what they should buy. They need to understand why they're buying. And I think that's what all these Gen AI capabilities, all these new age emerging technologies, and these ecosystems really facilitate. And I think the success to build that competitive leverage, as I understand from what Abhay and Rich really shared, is this, that I think it's important and imperative for organizations to understand that the only way forward is to bring in these consumer insights and to kind of understand with backed by these insights, how do you build that competitive leverage? How do you build that competence internally across your functions, whether it's products or pricing, and how do you engage with your consumers and your operations, your services, your contact centers? How do you pull that strategy in place with that? Yeah. So yeah, it was great. I think we're running out of time, but thank you so much, Rich. Thank you so much. I think we'd like to have you again. Abhay, we'd like to have you again. I think this is just the start of a little chapter that we've just made. Akash, thank you.
Great meeting you,
Yeah,
Abhay. I'm really impressed with what you're doing. It's
Thank you,
a
Rich.
joy to watch.
Yeah, thank
That's
you
high
so
praise.
much.
Thank you.
thank you,
And
Sakshi, for
I
putting this
I
together.
can't end this without saying, it was only the turn of the century, 2000, that I was in India watching people string personally owned coax cable between buildings to try to create a network that Durdashan could deliver a good signal across.
Yeah.
Right.
And here you've moved the whole problem to a mobile platform and taken the problem away, right?
That's
We're just getting started, Rich. I think there's a long way to go for all of us.
that's right.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
Okay.
much.
Thank
Lovely
you,
to-
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a good
Right.
day. Have a good night. Thank you.